You've seen Omar Omer Arbel's houses. If you're familiar with the Pacific Northwest architect, he's pretty prolific in that area. And this is one of his houses called 91. I don't know if you've seen this house in pictures, magazines, videos, but you haven't seen it like this. Now, popular opinion is expensive real estate, experimental, modern, real estate is the embodiment of, or can be the embodiment of luxury and exquisite or eccentric taste. That's not always the case. If you're an architect or have a design background, this is for you. If you have a great eye for details, this is definitely for you. There aren't any videos that kind of show this house in detail, so I'm just going to look at some very high resolution images so we can walk through it. We'll take a closer look, and I'll show you what most people don't see outside of the owner and the architect. Um, I'll uncover, some pretty interesting details, what they got right, what Omer got right, what his clients got right, and potentially what they got wrong. This will be a comprehensive look into the decisions made to create this house. I try not to have a long video, but I still wanted to be comprehensive just so you can see some of the processes and design thoughts and details and things like that go into designing and creating, building a house this way. Again, I'll break down what they got right. If it has any jaw-dropping or sophisticated design details to something that's kind of over the top and kind of out of the ordinary, and I call out with Mr. Mark. At the end, we'll look at if for the owner and the architect, if this is money wasted or money well spent based on the details, based on the architecture, based on the materials, based on the build quality. If you're familiar with this house, I did a review, or the architect, I've done a review before for his 75.9 house, and he doesn't name his houses; they're numbered. I guess for his purposes, they're numbered based on chronologically when they were built. They don't align to like a year, so to speak. From what I can tell, I think it's just in order, in sequential order of the things that he's created from other things like lighting, furniture, things like that. And so this represents 91, his 91st creation or design uh, deliverable. Let's say that right away. Let's get into the just this. What you see here is the this is looking from. Let me go back. This house is built on like off a coastline. I think it's in like an archipelago or island type of location off of Vancouver. This is built into a heavily wooded area. I think this area is going to be or in process of being developed into other similar houses that are designed by Omer Arbel. This particular one is the vantage point is looking from the body of water, looking inland toward the site. As you can see, this house is built. You can't immediately see it, but I'll show you in another picture that shows how it's built. This is kind of like a gully that opens up or will empty out rather into the body of water that's from the vantage point that we're looking from. It's I can't immediately see, but you'll be able to see from the overhead detail, so you can see how far away it is actually from the water, from the coastline. This is interesting because this is kind of like built like a bridge, like you build a bridge. So there, Rocky Ridge is a ridge on this side right here. There's another ridge right here, and it's kind of like I guess it's suspended by steel um, to form the I guess the foundation the platform with which the house was built upon. So this is interesting. So there is, and they built this house with the anticipation or the foresight that in 100 years that this area will be, due to rising water levels, that this will be right now. You can walk onto it and you can experience it this way, but in 100 years, this area will be filled with water. Still, I imagine he still built it so that it can still be experienced. It can still be a livable house 100 years from now, but this will be a very different site. we'll move on from there, but just wanted you to see that you can't immediately determine just from this image that this is a void. This is like you can walk under this area right now, in its current state right now, and just kind of appreciate the fact that it's built like a bridge of sorts. This is not a small house. I don't know the square meters or square footage at this point, but you'll see this is a pretty expansive house. Um, all right, let's get into it. You can see right now that it is built in a wooded area, and the question kind of begs itself of how much wood is too much wood. I, from reading a lot of the kind of the information that surrounds the kind of like the rationale behind some of the choices, is that this is he uses a lot of cedar in this house in this home, and in the general area there are a lot of the old growth cedar and some new growth cedar is I guess due to climate is not being I guess they don't some a lot of the materials used in this house were from the general area or the site. Not exactly sure if it, how much of it was from or site sourced lumber, but definitely in the general area. And so it's abundant, but it's also a lot of it is not harvested, but may have wood that was that had already maybe died or something like that, and so they used a lot of that wood. But again, the question is, even though this is in a wooded site, a lot of people would probably find it off-putting that we use a lot of wood in this modern area. I get in times past, it wouldn't be uncommon to have a log house in woods, but we have a lot of building materials available to us that would kind of necessitate, or even sometimes people would want to explore using materials outside of what's abundantly available, just for variety and aesthetics. But he uses a lot of wood, and you can see that here in the cedar cladding in this house, juxtaposed with modern window openings. And this was a mandate by the owners. Omer initially wanted to sandblast openings, kind of more like organic live edge type openings, uh, and not so much symmetric or geometric patterns. But the owner wanted this instead. So that was a compromise, as you know, like building anything is a compromise between construction, design, and practicality. And so the owners specified wanting the more organic, or the more aesthetically pleasing, more symmetrical type of openings for their windows. Moving on, we go to this is the back side of that house. You just kind of see a different vantage point of the ridge. This is the body of water that it looks out to. You can kind of get a better view here. What we were looking at before was on the other side of this ridge, or the bridge, kind of the bridge aesthetic. And again, you can see this is a pretty expansive home. And this kind of illustrates where we are right now. This is the water level as of 2020. I think this house was built maybe 4 or 5 years back. This was the water level at the time. In 100 years, it's going to rise another. I'm not sure what the height is, but kind of illustrates like right now. Take this grade area, and that's kind of like what you have right now in its place. But in 100 years, it'll be raised a little bit, so that again, it's the house is still elevated above that gully, but the water will be in a place that it doesn't currently exist. I find this pretty interesting. This is kind of like what I was talking about before, like the use of wood. This is edge grain uh, cedar, and this is pretty interesting because there's a juxtaposition of the rectangle shapes and the more organic stones. And then you can kind of see this is sandblasted edge grain cedar. And you can kind of see, kind of like the design detail. This is and this is very intricate work. These are, you would cut these. This is not something you can go to a store and get this way. You have to have people on site who would design, or to carefully map out how these edge grain pieces are laid out. And what's interesting is that our Omer described the differences. You can clearly see if you work with wood, you'll be able to see some of the differences between the old growth and the new growth. The old growth, the ring pattern is very tight, like this one here, or even like this here. But the newer grain, the newer cedar, the grain is way spaced out more, like here, even here. You can kind of see the differences. Just so you can see like this house tells a story. It tells a story of a blend of new material, old material, modern, traditional, that sort of thing. It's just a really cool image to see here, to see the the cedar, with the using natural elements, but also in a modern way. The other thing that's pretty interesting too is you can see that the level of detail that's required to pull off something like this is pretty. It's pretty, involved. And what I mean by that is you can look and see by the openings here. The openings, like sometimes, I mean, you have to carefully map out like the transitions between facades and then open spaces. You can see the open spaces align, from a perspective of um, imagine like just think of here when you see the spacing, the number of panels used. He stops right here at the edge of where the other shapes would naturally have stopped, as opposed to just cutting pieces that don't line up. I'm trying to make sure I say the I guess use the right terminology so that you can see that the openings here. I guess if you go from from here to here, all the cedar pieces are the same size, even though you introduced a disruption in the pattern here. I thought that's pretty interesting to be able to do. Also, the kind of like the area like the overhangs, they also align with the dimensions of the cut cedar. Not just here, but also here as well on the overhang. And this is just when you talk about just execution, this is just an amazing attention to detail that you see these shapes. They line up with the existing shapes just for continuity. This makes a lot of visual sense, a lot of aesthetic sense, practical sense. Um, you see this level of detail is very difficult to translate from architect to builder because they don't share the same brain. They don't, you can try to include details in the plans and things like that, but they don't often translate well when you're talking. Uh, if someone, depending on how someone, the right contractor makes a difference. I guess let me say that because you may have people who are just cutting just for cutting and not measuring accurately to account for the spacing. Just you got to have you may a lot of the choices can be altered. A lot of the designs can be altered just by changing a blade, just by introducing dust or something like that in the blade that can throw off. It may not manifest itself maybe like in like this area, but down the line when you multiply all the different thicknesses, it could change uh, dramatically enough where a small gap becomes a big gap. So this is pretty interesting to be able to see that. Moving on to the inside, this is pretty interesting. Again, we talk about there's a lot of wood. And I think let me just go back here. Having this um, as a kind of like a, I think it's a pleasing departure from, typical, how you would typically experience how wood is laid out. A lot of times people like to lay out wood in, horizontal or vertical, lengths. This kind of breaks up a lot of that, but then we start to see a little bit more here. When you start going inside the house, you see a lot more different expressions of the different wood material. But even inside, I think it, it I think they do a great job of not letting the abundance of different species of wood not become kind of tiring or monotone. We have, I believe, still the cedar here outside. We have fir, if I recall, uh, used inside. Not really sure what this is, but this is a, he's using, different finishes. Like, this is, I imagine this is a whitewashed or painted fir of a different texture. This is more finely finished here, and you'll get to see what this is pretty in the next shot. Well, I just find it's pretty interesting that this is kind of like again, just a good, pleasing interruption of all the different kinds of wood. Again, you have the cedar, the kind of rough sandblasted cedar here. You have a little finely textured fir here that's painted, and then you have the this area right here that has a very cool, fine, very sophisticated feel that matches some of the other stuff on the inside here. And then you got the more darker wood here on the ceiling to kind of, you know, make the long, expansive spaces feel more intimate. But going here, let's go to the next image and you'll see what this is. I think this is pretty cool. All right, so what this is kind of like a dining nook, breakfast nook type of thing. I guess you would just say dining. Again, from this vantage point, you can kind of see it juts out maybe like a foot and a half, or maybe like a foot and a half, maybe a foot. Just so when you're walking down the hallway, you can kind of see, you kind of build the anticipation to being able to experience this moment that you're about to come into, which is again just a really good kind of visual draw. Again, if you're walking down the hallway, you have the concrete here, you have the glass here, you have the fur here, and then you have this space that's about to open up, which is really cool, which is the dining nook. And I think it's just a really cool detail here. Again, it's in the woods. It kind of breaks up the thought of having a rustic. It's kind of like a modern rustic interpretation of what you would expect in a house that's built in this environment, but doesn't sacrifice the clean lines and the aesthetics, or introduces clean lines and aesthetics to what you would expect to be more rough, a more rough kind of visualization here. I think this is very nice. The other thing too is that you can kind of see. I'm not really sure what the not really sure what happens. I don't know if this looks like this could be maybe like some built-in storage or something like that. Not really sure because I see some seams here that looks like it may be something there. It just could be just design or just a way of breaking up the slab of wood here. But I mean, even still, it kind of the lines align with the bottom of the frame, and then this line right here aligns with the top of the table, which is just a really cool details that really don't probably they may not be functional, but aesthetically they speak to the design the desire of the architect to kind of introduce those fine details that make things more pleasurable to experience. Another thing too that I noticed is that in the fur cabinetry, this is pretty interesting that he created these recesses into the paneling that is the same width as the different layers or the different strips that make up the cabinet door. So this is just really cool because it basically they kind of disappear. They don't create any visual disinterest. They just kind of blend into it, but remain functional at the same time. And you see it here. You also see it here, and I think you see it in other places throughout. Pretty cool detail. And he is I think he was instrumental in designing this chandelier too. I think he has a hand in a lighting company, Bocce, I think is the name of it, that is represented or showcased here in the living space, in the dining space. Really cool. Moving on, this is the other side of that space. I believe. I think this is looking kind of forward. I may be wrong. I'm not really sure exactly where this is in relation to this space here. It looks like it's right next to it. Let's see. There's a glass. There's a glass right there. Let's see if this glass is right here. I can't really tell. Not really sure. In any event, well, it looks like it may not be exactly next door. But here's another kind of view, another vantage point of though the built-in kind of recessed handle to open up the cabinetry. Really cool details. I'm not really sure what's happening up here. I don't know if these are speakers or if they're just maybe just kind of I don't know the cabinetry or something like that. Maybe it's a spice cabinetry, a spice cabinet or something. Not really sure what that is, but in any event, it doesn't. Um, it's not a situation where it's kind of like offensive to the environment. I guess to the kitchen space or to the visual depth of the or design of the kitchen. It looks like it may be functional. Just don't know exactly what it is. The other thing too is that I see is that they integrate the modern gas hardware handle and hardware for the gas stove, gas cooktop, integrated very well that it blends into the to the cabinetry, but not in a way that takes away from. I think they both complement each other well, and neither takes away from the other, which is sometimes in spaces like this, these details are kind of pronounced. Whether it's the cabinetry that's pronounced and the hardware is kind of minimized, or then you have this where the hardware is more, you have the blocky or the big knobs and the cookware and the thing under the the appliances, and then this is a little bit more muted. I think they both are muted, but they both also command a certain level of attention just in their fine detail. It's really cool. And then same thing here. Not really a whole lot of not a whole lot going on with the countertop. I think I like this piece kind of better. It's actually pretty interesting. Uh, I think we'll see this in another image. Some of the very fine detail is very difficult to achieve. As you can see here, right here. This is not a standard wall outlet. This is, I'm not really sure what kind of stone this is, but they were pretty, it's pretty incredible to uh, align the electrical panel or wall outlet so that the stone is centered like pretty, I mean, exact in this. I mean, this has to be perfect. You can kind of move the outlets and things like that a little bit, but this has to be perfect. But the fact that they were able to achieve, and I think they did the same thing on this side too. You'll see in a different shot where they achieve pretty tight tolerances to make such a very mundane detail with power outlets to make it look like an architectural detail or a very finely designed, thought out detail, which it was in order to get this level of execution. This is just pretty interesting because a lot of places, even in multi million dollar homes, um, you see what is common off the shelf type of wall outlet, kind of, you know, uh, just kind of, installed into a wall with not much thought, not much detail. This is a whole different level of detail here, which kind of speaks to if they apply this, the kind of detail and execution thought process necessary to pull this off. You can just imagine how the rest of the home was thought out as well. All right, moving on. This is on the other side of uh, this space. Still the same kitchen area, cooktop, just a different vantage point. You can kind of see a little bit better, right? This is what I'm talking about. This is incredible to be able to pull this off. I don't know, I bet they probably destroyed, a panel or two in order to get to this piece right here. I want to say they did because it's kind of hard to tell. This looks like it's matched to this, but it might not be because you can kind of see there's some continuity here, maybe here, but not right here and not right here and not necessarily right here. I see a little bit right here, but the colors are a little bit different, which gives me the impression that they did a very good job of matching it. But I bet that they had to. This wasn't the first time they got this right, just because it takes an incredible amount of precision to make this happen. Nonetheless, they did a great job. Even if it may be a solid piece, but if it's not, they still did a great job of matching. But this is just a really cool detail here. Even like the seams between the cabinet, the drawers, and doors, they align. I don't think we can see it well right here, but I think if you saw it head on, you'll see that they align with the seams right here. Really cool detail. Again, different vantage point. Just looking from the other side of the island to the outdoor space here, overlooking the the property. Looks like they got Miele appliances. I think this is the Miele induction cooktop right here, and also a gas cooktop. I think it's Miele as well, which is really good stuff. So they use really good um, appliances in this home. Um, for continuity, it looks like, and I'm glad to see this too, just for visual, kind of continuity. They used the same material, the fur, the painted or whitewashed fur, with the same uh, recessed detail. Not sure what this floor is, and that's another thing too. There's no it may be 7 or 8 different kinds of wood in here. I'm not really sure, but it actually blends pretty well nonetheless. You have the looks like the cedar here again. Not sure what that is. Probably it looks like I don't think it's an oak. It looks like it may be a maple of some sort. But even still, when you have a lot of different kinds of wood, sometimes it doesn't play well. But I think they do a good job here. This looks like it may be walnut. This is another example of what I'm talking about. Just a lot of the different wood um, that they've used throughout the house. This is pretty good. And here's another thing too that we talked about earlier. This is a little bit easier to accomplish. Wood, you can kind of it's a little bit more forgiving than stone. Now, of course, you can kind of do a lot of playing around with wood to kind of get it to where you want. They may have cut the board just a little bit longer on each side, just so they can kind of trim a little bit away till they achieve the symmetry that they needed. But here's another one of those things where this is just a very, mundane in most other houses detail, or this is utilitarian, but they made this into the design. It's just really cool. And again, um, the use of wood, it plays well. I like it. I like that the details are, even though they didn't stick to one kind of wood, which I think would not have went well, just because it just becomes less interesting. Because the patterns are predictable. You don't really experience diversity of just design. Um, I think this is just pretty neat. I like it. Um, Same thing here. I think this is probably in the same room or something similar. Again, the same level of detail here. This might be, this doesn't look like walnut here. This looks like this may be like a cedar or a fir. Not really sure if they had to kind of change it up a little bit, but even still, very nice. I'm gonna end here. This house is um, pretty expansive. Again, don't know what the square footage is, but you can kind of see now the shape. I don't really love the design here. I'm not really sure what the what the intention here. It looks like it's kind of like a K or maybe like an R. Not really sure what they were trying to do. They don't seem to have a rhyme or reason because this area they could very well have made any shape he wanted to to make it more aesthetically pleasing. this looks to be kind of like a too much effort to be non-linear. I don't think. I guess what I mean is that I don't know if it was intentional to create this kind of amorphous, uh, kind of non-linear type of, or not symmetric, at least from the overhead view. I don't know if this was intentional to do it this way, or maybe like the site dictated it. But again, I think he could have. Only, and I say that only because this shape doesn't make sense in any kind of way that makes sense to me. Um, I think he could have just made it just like a rectangle, or he could have kind of made more natural looking shapes. It's just again not. I don't think it takes away from it, but sometimes you introduce things that make the challenge to build a little bit more unnecessary. I think he introduced some things that didn't have to be, but nonetheless, this is what it is. The vantage point that we were looking at before, like if you go back here, this area right here, I believe this area right here, I believe is the same as this area, and so the gully would kind of when the water rises, it's going to be kind of like around in this mid area, and this is like the rocky ridge on one side, and this is like the rocky ridge on the other side, and there's like a little dip in between. We didn't get to see what's in between. It looks like it may just be like an interior courtyard. We also did get to see this kind of like this little walkway here. But nonetheless, this is a really cool house. You can see how close it is um, to the water here. It's pretty cool way to experience nature in the middle of all the looks like they're fir trees. Um, from what I can tell, correct me if I'm wrong. They look like they're some kind of a fir. Um, Overall, I had to give you this kind of tour this way only because there are not very many um, not very many images and not any videos that I could find. And I combed the websites, even Omer Arbel's website for any videos. There just aren't any that kind of show the house in all its glory. Most of what he shows on his website is just kind of like the site, a lot of the trees and things like that. But you can find a couple of videos that kind of talk to the rationale and some of the thoughts and things like that, and also some of the um, the, some of the things, some of the requirements from the owner. Now, we'll say if we go back just to revisit, where we are with some of the design. I really appreciate kind of like how it's sited on the property. I don't really appreciate the some of the design, some of the shapes. They don't really. I think they're unnecessarily complex. Like you can see it here. Also, you can see it. You can kind of see it just here. I don't really understand the shape, but I don't have insight into the conversation, into the design sessions that they had with Omer had with the owners. This doesn't make sense to me. I'm not going to use it as a takeaway. I'm not going to take anything away from it, but it certainly doesn't add to it. I think the beauty in this house comes from the use of the materials and the execution of the trim work. Some of the just design language is just really cool to experience. Some of the details, like this carved out, built out kitchen nook or dining nook. Um, I really appreciate that. Even though it's in the middle of the woods, it doesn't feel too log cabinish to me. It has very much a distinct modernism to it. I also feel like this would be something that would that would be timeless. Even in 100 years, it would still be appreciated. 100 years, yeah, 100 years from now, and we see a lot of those types of houses where they're built like for right now, and then like 2 or 3 years later, they feel very, very, very dated. I think the use of the materials and how they executed it is going to lend itself to being able to appreciate this house in 100 years. I mean, the glass. I mean, these are very top quality type of materials. I think this is a Unilux slider, and he probably used similar glass throughout the home. These are going to be things that will last. They're built to last. They cost a little bit more, well, quite a bit more for a lot of the applications. And I think you're going to realize uh, the the value there. Again, these are things that are not off the shelf. They're built specifically for this house. I think it's going to, again, think these things are going to age well. You're not going to be here in 50 years and say, oh, I just can't live with this. This is tacky. I don't think this is going to be one of those things. This is going to be still, a nice uh, um, viewpoint to experience. I think, in 100 years, if you have to change it to whatever they're going to use instead of gas or induction or whatever, I think this is still, again, aesthetically pleasing and uh, classic. Um, so I guess in conclusion, I believe this is money well spent. I think this is money well spent in a lot of areas. I think this is uh, a good example of blending in modern architecture into a natural environment. You don't get to see that executed very well. A lot of times, again, they just plop down a house more like a modular type of thing and just kind of just let it be what it be. But this kind of turns it kind of kind of wraps itself around this environment. So, um, oh, also wanted to say thank you. We've reached 100 subscribers for the this architecture channel. Thank you for 100 people saying yes. I want to learn more about. I want to appreciate. I also wanted to critique some of these houses that we see that are kind of ridiculously priced, and see what makes these houses, what they are. So I appreciate the 100 subscribers. Let's run it up to 10,000, 100,000, and keep these conversations going so that we can appreciate architecture. Till next time, thank you.